So yes, where was I? So yes, that was part of a course in my life when I was looking at Eastern philosophy and psychology, which I did a 5-year training with the Free Amsterdam University. And prior to that, yeah, lots of other stuff. Working with crystals, working with stones, always been interested in that. And then also parallel to all of that, working as a corporate trainer. So a lot of stuff was going on. It always comes from the same place. I sometimes think, you're a jack of all trades, but actually, if you look back to the central point of all of this, it's all energy, and it's all about changing the quality of the energy and lifting it up. And that's kind of what's going on. Currently, I work as a spiritual coach and mentor, Reiki when I can, workshops and courses, and then also I do a monthly numerology forecast on Facebook, which is free, so feel free to friend me if you want that. And then I also work with sound, because I started off learning sound and voice at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, so that's kind of my get in, and the rest came from there. So that gives you a bit of my background and why I'm talking to you about what I'm talking to you about. So, the energies of 2021. I think I asked everybody in the blurb I sent to have a paper and a pen or a pad, not necessarily for writing a lot, but just because I'd like you to just jot down the year number, so 2021, because when I'm referring to things, you will notice how I go, and it saves me having to explain too much. In numerology, there are a few rules, so it's kind of important to get those out of the way. So let me first start that every number, irrespective of how many digits it has, always has a 1 in it, because if there isn't a 1, the rest doesn't follow. So the energy of a 1 is like a sort of base chakra, and indeed it does link to that, but it always has that in it. So the second thing is that you read numerology, you need the energy of numbers from right to left. Normally we read or we write from left to right. But with reading energy, you go the other way. And you do that because the end of a number, the last thing you write when it's more than 1, relates to soul energy. So it has a much finer, higher vibration. But it does urge you, and it urges your path. So it's equally important. It's just a different frequency. Okay, something else. Any number that's repeated in a number you look at, pay attention to, because it's important. It's telling you this is really important. It's an emphasis. So look out for it. Something else that most people know is that numerology is about reduction, reducing numbers to a single number. What is not often understood is that the single number that you end up with is a little bit like a cake. It's a bit like maybe a Christmas cake, and you see it from the outside as a shape and a colour, and you take stock of it in your head and you look at it, but you don't really know what's in there. And so it's very easy to say, oh, it's a Christmas cake, but you forget that it has almonds and it's had cherries steeped in brandy for 10 months or whatever. It's had all these different ingredients put in, which is what makes the flavour of the cake, what gives it its quality and consistency. So it's really important to not just look at a number that you've reduced, oh, it's only, as I heard the other day somebody say to me, it's, oh, this year is only a 5. Well, yeah, and then some, because the 5 symbolises the cake shape and form and colour, but it does not tell you what the ingredients are. And it's the ingredients that will make you want to eat it or not. So, something else, and finally, numerology is never predictive. and certainly not esoteric numerology, which is my bag. It only offers options. It offers you suggestions. It suggests the course that an energy will flow towards or away from or go to. But it is not going to tell you what to do. That is your choice. So, as I said, we start from the right side of the number, and we start therefore with the 1. Now the 1 is in this position of soul energy of the year. A 1 necessarily, the base chakra, yes, but it's to do with survival. It's to do with the masculine element, air, and the mind. It is also known as the ray of will and power. And because of its mind connection, it has all those connections that we conjure with the mind. It has fear and worry and anger and ego on one side, but on the other side, of course, when you lift it up, it has insight, intuition, divine mind, superconscious. So it has all those possibilities. The 1 also is the power. It is known in numerology as the Big Bang because, as I said before, without 1, no other number can be. So it has to have a huge amount of oomph to it, a huge amount of power in order to stoke and progress all the other numbers that come forth from it. And so, like I say, Big Bang. So in terms of what that symbolizes, it's a power of focus, a power of singularity, because it's 1. It's very much alone, all 1. It's one-pointed, it's intense, and it amplifies. And there's a huge, great blast connected to this 1 at this particular frequency. Because the frequency is fine, all of these things go faster, go quicker, make more impact. And there is a hint of volatility that has come since we have moved from 2020 to 2021. It's much more volatile. And you will have found that already in that cusp period, which is really, reasonably speaking, from about October onwards, that it ramps up. November, certainly, December for sure, that then comes in. And so therefore, we find that that's something you need to keep in mind. So, on a physical level, a 1, could you mute please, people? Thank you. On a physical level, we're talking blood, iron levels, and very much part of the first chakra, the ability to assimilate, retain and release. Now, whether that is the organs of elimination or whether that is at the emotional and the mental state, it's a question of being able to let go of what is no longer necessary because you've absorbed what you need from it. Not letting go because you're fearful, but letting go in the fullness of time, having completed the process. So that is very important as well. So that's the first number we look at. And now we move gently from the 1, we're going to the 2, which is the next number, which is part of the 21. The 2 relates, of course, to the sacral, because it's the second chakra. It's a feminine impulse, it's water, it's emotion. But it's also, if you look at it, it's 100% up on the 1 that came before. It's expanded its energy by 100%. 100% in addition is 2. So that's the first thing. But also a 2 can be divided. A 2 creates and brings to the table polarity and duality. And the choice to split or come together. And again, because this is in the position of the second number coming from right to left, it still relates to that soul urge, the soul energy. Much finer than the 2 will happen further down the line, which is the physical level. So we're looking at the possibility of single consciousness, i.e. me, mine, or unity consciousness, community consciousness, us, them. And so, as I said before, it's choice. It's choice whether to fulfill the two's energy as the ray of love and wisdom, and to create and have that balance, or to gather to oneself and do it just for me. And so therefore there is a huge opportunity here for responsibility, the ability to respond. How are we going to respond? Not react, but respond. How are we going to respond to what is being given to us, what is being presented in front of us? Again, is it response in a nurturing way, coming together, embracing, supporting, holding together the energy in order to bring forth, which is very much what the two is. And remember, it's creative. And that holding together can be the solar system, the abundance, the harvest, but it's also holding together for self. And that is that dichotomy, that is that choice. Harvesting suggests karmic impulse, a karmic input, and indeed it has. You reap what you sow. So we can slip into the lower aspect here, the fear, the worry, the doubt, the neediness, or we can harvest much higher and move it up. The karmic thing is really, it's physics, isn't it? Every action has an equal and or opposite reaction, depending on the original energetic input, the quality thereof. So what you put in quality, you will get back in quality. And so it's really important that the harvest be uplifted and it becomes a higher aspect of the waves of this particular number, because it's water, so it's waves, it's emotion, but again at this level much finer but equally penetrative. It penetrates, you can't duck and dive out of it. The creative impulse here at the sacral is receptive, nurturing, and a great connection to Mother Earth, and a recognition, a consciousness of Mother Earth, and indeed a recognition that she has her own consciousness. So we've looked at the 1 and we've looked at the 2, and now we're going to combine them, and we're looking at the 21. The 21 is interesting because we are voicing this. For the first time, we are voicing 21 all of this year. And obviously, the more we voice something, remember what energy we might use to voice it in, the more we bring forth, call forth, manifest a similar frequency. So if we go, oh gosh, is this 2021 is such an awful year, it's not helping. So it's really important to start becoming aware of how we speak, what vibration we use to call into being the energy that we want, rather than the energy that we bring forth simply because we are lacking an awareness or we don't think it matters. It's really important that we do. The 21 is the first expression of goddess energy. Now the goddess energy appears for the first time in the 20, and more of that in a minute when I get to the 20. But as the first expression, as the 21, it is sensitive. When I say first expression, I mean therefore, it's a little bit like somebody who's just had a promotion and they've been given this job, but they haven't really had all of their training yet. They started a bit of the training, but they haven't quite finished it yet. So they're quite competent in some bits, but not really very competent in others. And that's really what the 21 energy is. It's more competent than the 20, but it hasn't quite, got its confidence about it yet. And what happens when we as humans are put in front of a situation where we're not entirely sure, we can quite easily either call into being our calmness, our balance, and trust in the universe that it's going to be fine, or we can go into the humanness and the egoic part and go, and then react with a degree of anger. We snap, we kick the cat, whatever it takes to, you know, in that sense of reactive energy. And it's the same here. So this first expression, this 21, is super sensitive, and it can go into self-pity. It certainly goes into fear. It can go into doubt, anxiety, or it can do what feels right. And in that sense, it goes into the heart and it asks, and it forgets about ego, and it offers up, and it trusts what it gets. And so we're looking here at, do we work for the self, or do we work for the wider community and the cosmic galactic aspects of that? So the 1 we've done, the 2 we've done, the 21 we've done. Now we're going to look at the combination of the 2 plus the 1, which makes a 3. Again, you know, it's an ingredient in this cake, and it's a very important one. The 3 is still an energetic contraction of that soul urge energy. It's known as the ray of active intelligence, and it connects very strongly with the divine plan, the blueprint of manifestation. If you want to call it the universal plan, you can. If you want to call it God's plan, you can. Use whatever words you're comfortable with, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from. In other words, the highest possible energy, not the middle management, but the CEO. So this divine plan is symbolized, the 3, by a figure, and it has been like this since forever. It's the ancient equilateral triangle. So a horizontal line at the bottom, and then 2 equal lines going up to a point at the top, which has equal, or more or less equal if you're doing it with on your pad. It's more or less equal. So you've got that shape like that, and then that like that. Okay. Now, that symbolizes the 3, and what it symbolizes, the left corner at the bottom of the horizontal line is the conscious mind. The right corner is the unconscious or subconscious mind. And the triangle at the top is the superconscious mind that brings in and connects to spirit. Now, when everything is lined up and beautifully balanced and even, it is very simple to move straight up into spirit and pull down what you need and pull down that connection. But if it's in any way wonky, if the sides are a bit sort of, you know, sideways like that or that way, then there is no straight connection up. And thus, it's left brain and right brain connecting, whole brain thinking, whole brain connection to spiritual brain, to spiritual being. Because, why is this important? Because the deeper we can bring spirit into matter, the stronger it will hold. If we just kind of froth it around and it's just icing on the cake, to use the cake again, it's not going to stick. It's, you know, you're going to forget it really quickly. So it's something you've really got to pull in on a daily, hourly, minute by minute basis. That connection is really important. And it really is the responsibility of the individual, how they respond, again, ability to respond for themselves, with the understanding that what you do for self will benefit the collective. How does it work? Well, when you've got yourself in balance and you're pulling down and you're filling your being and your aura with that connection and that light, that then enables that light to travel and move into the light and move into the auras of others, if that is appropriate and if that aligns with divine will and purpose. Some people will say to me, well, you know, what about protection? Well, I have, as those of you who work with me know, I have this thing about protection. If you're connected to light, you don't need protection because the light protects. It's a little bit like, you know, you go into a dark room and you strike a match. Who's going to win? The darkness or the match? The light. So it's kind of self-explanatory. If your light is strong enough and authentic enough and sincere enough, that's all you need. And that then can become the way that you can help the collective, because what we do has that ripple effect. And it can help break down people's fears and people's doubts and generally help uplift them, even just their spirit, just their mood. If you are calm and balanced and a sense of humor and you know all the stuff. So it's very important for group energy to have this uplift and to have this calmness, and it's really, as I say, it's vital. Okay, so we've done the 21 into the 3, and now we're going to the next digit, which is the 0. And the 0 in numerology is known as the lens, because as it of itself, a 0 has no value. It's 0. It's nothing. It's no thing. So, but what does a lens do? Well, think of your glasses. Think of your contact lenses. It sharpens up your vision. It reduces, it makes you see better. Or if you've got the wrong lens in, it makes you see worse. So it will affect your vision. It will affect the clarity of what is being shown to it. Amplification, amplifying this perspective, and also the highlighting what you need to look at, what needs to be considered. It sharpens all other energies, all previous energies, I should say, because what in the trajectory of moving from right to left, those two, in fact 3 other numbers we've just talked about, so the 1, the 2, the 21 and the 3, 4 other numbers, have to go through that lens. Their qualities have to travel through the lens in order to get to the 2 at the start of 2021. That is the first 2 we meet, and it's the physicality of that 2 at the beginning that gets infected, or how can I put it? Yes, it gets given additional information from all the rest of it that comes through this lens. Again, there's a degree of karmic value here, because it expands what is being presented. So good becomes better, bad becomes worse. If there is balance in the energies that are flowing through to this lens, then it's becoming easier, and the flow will be calmer. If there are lots of imbalances, it becomes more difficult, and it can become very chaotic. So again, how does it travel will depend on the previous inputs as they funnel together to go through this lens. Okay, so now we've done the lens and we're moving on to the 2. So that's the first 2 that you might write down if you're asked to write 2021. And the 2, the first number that you write, is placed at the physical and the material level. It's very 3D, it's very 3-dimensional, it's very mundane, it's very feet on the ground, and as a result it has a much slower vibration at this position. It hasn't got that fast light frequency, that ability to cut through stuff, the other end of the scale that we talked about, the soul energy. But at this energy, it's not quite plodding, but it's that sort of, it's a real thump. It really will bang the message home, which is kind of what we need, because this is where we live and this is what we have to deal with, and this is very often the only energy we can truly understand. Nevertheless, it can be a bit of a thump. So basic energy, and again we're talking similar qualities as I talked about before, so duality versus oneness, single versus group consciousness. Those waves that I spoke of before, which are very much the moon energy, the emotion and all of that connect to the 2, those waves can split you if you don't ride them. And it's really important to think of it like those waves, like, you know, a surfer. You're on a surfboard, you are absolutely at one with your surfboard, you're riding those waves and you get this walloping enormous great wave. Now, if you're a good surfer and you are balanced and in tune with your wave, you will ride it. But if you're not, the surfboard will go one way and you'll go flying the next. So we will be split out. And that is very much what this energy at this point will do. It'll either pull together or pull apart. Now that's on a singular, i.e. on an individual, but also on a collective. So the emotional aspect of this number will be heavier, will be much more into the sort of heavier vibes, suppression, depression, pushing down. So on a negative vibe, you might get the insecurity, the fear, the anger, worry, anxiety. On the more positive aspect, the other side of the coin, you'll get feeling secure in as much as you trust the process. So you are secure in yourself, you accept what comes, you allow things to unfold, and you concentrate on being rather than doing. You be with yourself. In other words, that's that sense of trust in higher powers, maybe your own higher powers, but getting you to a point where actually you might not be able to see what the plan of this is, but it will come good. Just stay with it and live for the moment. And so it's really important not to speculate, not to go down the I wonder if, because ego is great at that. It can produce all sorts of, you know, wonderful illusionary things based on, of course, past experience. So it might be this and it might be that. And then suddenly you're in a funnel and you go down it and you get lost. So as much as possible, stay in the now. And really important, deepen the spiritual connection on a daily basis, because then you won't get rocked by events. Now, however your spiritual connection might be, it might be meditation, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to sit in a position. You can meditate doing the washing up. You can do a walking meditation. There are many ways to focus the mind and bring it into the now. But if you find it really, really hard, then what you might try doing is using gratitude, saying thank you. What does gratitude do? Well, even if you're not entirely secure in the understanding of, you know, well, really, why should I be grateful for it's raining outside for a start, and why should I be grateful for that? Well, yeah, but we need rain, and you've probably got a roof over your head, and, you know, there are certain things, even small things, you can be grateful for. But gratitude actually becomes a habit pattern, it becomes a muscle, and it becomes something you slip into, because gratitude helps erode the crust that gets built by ego around itself from too long having to have basically come up with different ways of dealing with stuff, which it's become a habit pattern. And ego can very easily slip into that. And then that builds like a little wall around it, little eggshell, and it becomes crusty and inflexible and it doesn't want to open. So gratitude softens that, and it allows something else the possibility of something else to come in. So yeah, that helps. Something else that helps, and particularly when you've got a mind, and in particular perhaps if you are somebody, and I think quite a few of us have been suffering this recently, where perhaps you wake up at 3 in the morning and then you can't get back to sleep again, and you think, oh, you know, really? And then, you know, you lie there because you know your body needs the rest and you probably don't want to get up because whatever, but you know, the old mind's going, and you might try different modalities of whatever, you know, but somehow it's not really working for you. So try humor. go for humor, even if you can, if you can access, if you share your bed, then, and if you're the only one awake, then, use your iPad or your iPod or your phone and some kind of hearing extensions or whatever, and plug yourself into something that will make you laugh. So whether that's, I don't know, radio or whatever, YouTube, whatever you fancy, but have something that really produces a belly laugh, because it's really important. Because what that does, it stops the mind from rationing, because we are, rational thinkers on that sort of left brain. We parcel information up and project it forward based on old patterns, and then that rations to 1, to 2, to 3. So if this happens, then that will happen, and that, and we go down that little road, and before we know where we are, we've painted a picture of doom and gloom, and then we react to that. We worry about it, and we get anxious about it. And basically, you create your fear and then you fear it. I think it was Henry Ford who said it to start with. But, that is something we all do, and we all have the potential of doing, but it's a choice. If you use humour takes a spoke and sticks it in that wheel, and everything comes to a grinding halt. It buys you space. And in that space, you can regroup, you can neutralise your mind, and you can start again. You can stop going down that trail of panic and fear and worry. Okay, so we've done those numbers. We're now looking at the 2 and the lens, the 20. I mentioned before that 20 is the entrance of the goddess energy. And again, we have talked that up since last year. Last year, 2020, we had 2 of them, so double trouble, as I think we probably all recognise. The 20 came from the 19. Originally, the year before that, it was 2019. And we still had that semblance of balance from the masculine, because the prefix of a 1 in front of something will indicate a more masculine, a more singular. The 2 is the double, the community, the group. And having spoken it, of course, we spoke it into being, really, that 20, from 2010 onwards. Prior to the year 2010, we were talking about 2008, 2009. We didn't really say 2009. So suddenly at 2010, we spoke it, and we spoke it out, and we'll be continuing to speak it for a little while. It's bringing into being that basic, at the physical material 3D level, the mundane goddess energy, which isn't mundane at all. We've moved up from 1 to 9 is the first spiral of numbers, 10 to 19 is the second, 20 to 29 is the third. So we're already in a third spiral, a third dimension possibility. But again, it is a karmic allowing creation to unfold a new order. As to the quality of that new order, that depends on what we've put in before, and that depends on what we bring into it. Certainly the possibilities are there for uplift, because again, as I said, you move from the 1 to the 2, so the uplift is there into a new orbit. That's all very much part of a 20 energy. Uplifting into a new orbit usually means you go faster, and so there's an increase of speed, an increase of just an energetic sense of time moving and changing, but also that we are sometimes feeling a little bit dizzy with it all. And some people have complained of vertigo really from last year onwards. This sort of instability, while all this recalibration takes place, there is an instability that can come out where we feel unstable, and we can get overwhelmed by it, because we're really walking between two worlds at the minute, with this 20 in that position and with the 21 energy coming through the lens and joining. All of that is very sort of up and down and very wavy again. How do we get through it? Well, to survive it, we have to be real. We have to be authentic. There can be nothing untruthful around anymore. Now that's a huge statement, because we might sing, you know, we might individually all go, well, yeah, of course, we'll tell the truth, and we'll be honourable, and we'll do what we think is right, and we'll do what we think is right in this moment. But I'm talking collectively as well. I'm talking socially, politically, governments, industries, corporates, you name it. So at every level, there needs to be truth. And it's really, really important. And I think, in fairness, we've already seen quite a lot of that coming up, where the demand for that is really pressing. That people speak truth. They don't, you know, they don't try and prefabricate stuff. They don't try and hide. They try and bring it out as it is. In terms of, for us, individually, we have to be authentic to ourselves, true to ourselves, our own energy. It has to come from the heart. That's as simple as what it is. For those who can't or won't uplift and won't bring it from the heart, won't consider truth to be really the only option, they cling to the lower aspect of ego and delusion, then you get what we've beginning to see already. You get the violence, the uncertainty, the delusion, the illusion, rebelliousness, turbulence, chaos. Now, interestingly, I first did this talk on Tuesday, the 5th, and that evening I did it at the same time, and I finished, and the next morning I heard from my radio news all this business in America, and that it happened overnight with us. So it's very much that sort of energy that can come up very quickly when things need to come to a head in order for old stuff to disappear. Okay, so now we're going to look at a number that has come twice in this sequence. And that's the 2. We have the 2 at the beginning of the year. We have the 2 at the beginning of the 21. Okay? So repeated digits underpin the year energy, and those repeated digits in that position will underpin it until the year 2029. So it's kind of telling you for a while that this is actually quite important. When you pull those two numbers down and you place them side by side, because remember, they're only divided by a lens, and therefore no thing, something of no value of itself, you get a 22. And so the 22 is what's known in numerology as a mirror number. A mirror number is where the same digit displays itself twice, and because the energy is being reflected by the one next door to it, it allows for limitless reflection. And it's a little bit like if you had a mirror and you placed the mirror opposite another mirror facing it, then you would get, if you looked in, you would get this unending reflection of yourself. It would look like you went on to eternity. Because mirrors simply reflecting mirrors, reflecting mirrors. And that is very much what it does here. The limitless reflection of its own energy, which is light. And that is the 22. It's very subtle, but it's very significant. Now, what does light do? I've already kind of explained that when I talked about dark rooms and matches. It dispels darkness. In other words, it dispels ignorance. It dispels pseudo stuff. It dispels fake news. It dispels all of that. It brings to light what hasn't been seen before. It's a bit like, you know, you turn your dimmer switch up and you suddenly notice the spider's web in the corner. That's what light does. And spiritual light is no different. It does exactly the same. So what isn't working, what's in the way, will be highlighted. Since 2020, the light has come in. That was last year, because that was the first time we had the 22, the mirror number, supporting, underpinning in a very subtle way. But this is, in a sense, the hidden aspect of numerology. This is really significant. On a practical, physical way, perhaps last year, cast your mind back, certainly to lockdown and summer. I don't know about you, but I certainly noticed a lot of changes in daylight, the quality, the radiance of daylight, the radiance of sun. Yes, we didn't have planes, and yes, we didn't have that many cars, and therefore, you know, pollution wasn't as bad, but nevertheless, the colour, and there seems to be an upgrade of light. On a planetary level, the same sort of thing, cosmology, the strength of the sun, the particles coming from the solar flares, coming deeper into our atmosphere. We are truly being touched by light, and therefore it's much harder for any of us to be and stay dark and stay hidden and stay untruthful and stay in ego. It's not going to work. We are being bombarded by light, and it's showing up what isn't correct and isn't in alignment. The physics of light causes low frequency manifestations to dissolve, and basically it also causes and changes how we think of things. So structures we've known throughout our lives disappear. So society, as I said before, finance, institutions, education, all of those will need to change the way they look at things, the way they operate perhaps, some more than others, but give them a degree of freedom. And also, of course, in ourselves, our attitude, beliefs, old ways, and even, in a sense, sometimes our physical DNA, because that comes through something called epigenetics. Epigenetics, please look it up because it's a big subject, and do give it justice. But epigenetics is, in a nutshell, the ability to change one's inner through how one feels about things, what one speaks, and the emotions we bring up. So we can actually change not only our own, but our future generations by what we project and how we bring it forth. Our consciousness is attuned and aligned to light through the 22. And the 22 is also known as a little label. It is known as the Master Builder. It builds through and into spirit, into the spiritual energy. And so the 22 is touched by divine inspiration. Think Michelangelo, think Leonardo da Vinci. Guys who didn't have great educations, who really kind of, in a sense, were, you know, rude mechanicals, if I were to quote Shakespeare, which of course is another one. Geniuses without necessarily knowing where that came from. Touched by divine inspiration, taken to another level, transformative. And the Master Builder energy of 22 is full of creativity, an architect of the new, transforming that what was. And shifting timeline, shifting, making things elastic so things lose their rigidity. And it gives you that chance to remold and restructure. When you look at a 22 and you reduce a 22, it is, I was going to say bad manners to reduce a mirror number, but what you do when you reduce a mirror number, you tend to get a sort of a fairly negative impulse of that. But in this instance, it's quite useful because it actually chimes with the final total number that we'll come to in a moment. So reduction of 2 plus 2 is 4. Normally, that's the ray of purity and harmony. And in the lower level consciousness, it is very much to do with rigidity, controlling behavior, managed situations, be they fabricated or not, conformity, rules, regulations. And the reason I've struck on this is because it is now directly shot out of the water by the total year number. And the total year number is 20 plus 21, which is 41. And so here we get the 1 again, because you start on the right and you move to the left. The 1 here comes from that soul urge. Now it's a lesser soul urge than the one we looked at in 2021, because there we had 4 digits, here we only have 2. There's a little nearer to the physicality, but nevertheless it has that higher quality. So it's now got to shatter all those old constraints and all those old patterns and those old templates and traditions and structures. Of the 4, they're going to be blown out of the water by this 1. And the 41 tells us that everything that doesn't like, in inverted commas, light, will crumble, has to go. If there is resistance, the resistance will bring friction. And so the friction in itself will then have the potential, if that is how it comes, to create a perfect storm. Shaken up, stood on its head, conflict, turbulence. I would suggest that we will certainly are experiencing that now, and will probably, you know, it will carry on for a bit of this year, certainly. I tend not to do month-by-month forecasts on these. I do those as they come. So as I said to you before, if you're interested in that, contact me on Facebook, and then you have a free access to the month energy on the 1st of each month. But certainly I would say first 3, 4, 5, even 6 months perhaps. It's going to take a while. But this is globally, doesn't necessarily mean here, but it just generally, because of course this affects everyone. Okay, so now we come to the final. We're seeing this Christmas cake that we talked about right at the beginning, okay? We talked about the Christmas cake having a shape and a colour and all the ingredients. Well, you've had all the ingredients, you've seen them now, you've been introduced to them. Now we come to the cake itself, which is a 5. 1 plus 4 is 5, which is how 2021 delivers. This is how it presents itself. This is the cake on the tray. Would you like a slice, madam? This is what it is, okay? And 5 is a mind number. It's a clever number. It's the ray of concrete knowledge, both in terms of study, science, information, experimentation, but it's also knowledge with a capital K, where we know God, where we know Spirit. The 5 in its placement as a single number between 1 and 9 is exactly in the middle. It has 4 numbers on one side and 4 on the other. In the way that we write them in this part of the hemisphere, 1, 2, 3 and 4 face the direction of the 1. If you were to think of the symbols that you write as having little faces, they tend to point to the 1. They tend to point to the mundane, the origination, the Big Bang. 6, 7, 8 and 9 have more of a feeling of the other side, and certainly 5 points to the other side, and 5 is the one number in the midst of it that can do a 180-degree turn and move from a very basic, and if I say sex, drugs and rock and roll, that's very much wild child 5 basic behavior. So very undisciplined, very stormy, very out of the box, very, I want to do it, I want to experiment, I won't be told, doesn't like authority, doesn't like rules and regulations, very contradictory, very kind of teenagery in a sense, without trying to upset too many teenagers, but you know what I'm saying. It's that sort of energy versus this wonderful ability to know spirit through self-expression. And of course, the 5 relates also, as we know, to the throat, but the throat is a chakra of self-expression, expression of self. Yes, the voice, of course, but also in the throat, or relating to the throat energy, we have, you know, whatever, however you express yourself, be it as a cook or a dancer or a player of instruments, whatever it takes. So yeah, all of those things and more, but basically, it wants to sort it out for itself. It wants to try. It wants to make it right experientially. It won't take it as a theory. And so in that process of, you know, think a small child, no, I want to do it, I want to make the cake, and in the process, you know, the jug gets broken and this happens and that happens and the kitchen ends up a mess. That is kind of what we are in. So it's quite disruptive energy. And when you look at that together, of course, with all the other ingredients, you will understand why and how. So now, having done all the numbers, I also tend to look at the sound values of the year or anything that I do. And the sound values basically come about by looking at writing the number down in letters. So 20-21. And I looked at all the vowels and then the consonants and then everything together. So all the vowels together symbolize the soul energy. So again, the urge of the soul. It comes to a 35-8, and it's about breaking out of the old to bring in the light. And while I was writing that, because I've obviously got a few notes, because there's quite a lot to get in a sort of structured way when I've got a set time. When I was writing this, I thought of Leonard Cohen. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And the crack is what we need. We have to crack open to allow the light of change to come in and transform us, transmute us, and change, and give us that freedom in order to change. So that's the soul energy. The personality energy of that is all the consonants. This is a 33-15-6, which is savior energy. Savior as in Christ light, as in Christic light. It's the light that we all have. And this is something that's really important because it's something that many people deny. It is that fact that we are co-creators with the divine. And we might only have within us that tiny light, but we have the light, and therefore it is our responsibility to act accordingly. Not always to think that we hide that it's us as humans and then the divine or spirit. But no, we are it. We are part of that. We're either one or we're not. And people talk about oneness, but you know, we can't be oneness and we're here and it's somewhere else. So it is that oneness, that savior energy, which is knowing what is right, working from the heart, trusting and staying in the moment, and then, you know, overarching everything with compassion and kindness. Also, this number relates to sacrifice. And it's really important that you remember the derivation where it comes from. Sacrifice, if you look it up in the dictionary, it is to make things sacred. So it's making everything sacred by remembering the spiritual aspect of everything, remembering the divine aspect, remembering our responsibility to do things from a higher situation rather than from a lower. So expanding from the small self to the higher self. And then we look at all of those letters together and we get the overall self-expression, which is 68-23-14-5. And it's crashing out of the old. And I do mean crashing. I don't mean, you know, walking nicely to the front door and opening it quietly. I mean crashing. There's a lot of power in this. It takes a lot of it needs power in order to make that crack. Crashing out of the old in order to morph into freedom. The freedom we need to become something new, whether it's on a physical level, mental, emotional level, whether it's on a political level, we need to bring in new things. And so the bottom line of this really is, it's about our own responsibility to connect and to embody light. And if we do that, that will keep us in the right alignment and keep us from feeling too rocked by what's going on. And having said that, I put together some activations because I really think it's important, besides lots of words speaking those at you, and I noticed very thankfully that you've taken some notes, some people, but you know, it's really important to give it activations. Now previously, in previous years, I would usually use my gongs because I'm a gong player, so I do that, but this is not really appropriate this year. And it's also really important that you have something that relates to what you are, what you have, and we all have a body. And so I've used the activations reminders so that you can use your own body. So maybe if you just will do this, and then I'll do questions after. But if you just like to put everything down for a minute and just make yourself comfortable. If possible, have your hands on your knees or your lap, palm upwards, please, in the position, the mudra, to accept. Accepting with trust anything that comes. And so closing the eyes, just connecting for a moment with the breath. And connect with your intention. Intention rules so much. If you intend something, you will create it, you will embody it, and you will make it happen. Connect with intention to your divine, your higher self, wherever you feel that to be. And you allow that to come in, and you breathe from there into the heart space, the vessel that transmutes. And on the out-breath, you breathe out into the surrounding energy field, into your aura. Breathing in the breath that becomes an expression of compassion and kindness. Breathing out compassion and kindness. In a sense, you are surrounding yourself with that. And remembering what I said earlier, what you fill your aura with, you will then be able to radiate out into your family, into your community, into space. Allow the breath to continue. Breathing in, into the heart, the compassion and kindness. Breathing out, into the aura, compassion and kindness. And set the intention just for that to continue, whilst you now put your focus on your arms that are hanging from your shoulders, and your hands that are palm upwards on your lap, and your fingers. Your hands are a symbol of generosity, of exchange. Your hands give, and they receive, and they share. And the fingers are antennae of compassion. With fingers and palms we stroke, we pat, we make feel better, we heal. Allow that breath that you're breathing, allow that now also from the heart space to go down into the arms, into the hands. Really focus on that and notice how the arms are softening, the hands are softening, the fingers soften. It's very important the fingers are allowed to relax, because so often fingers are great stress collectors. We sometimes, without being conscious of it, we will move them, we will pick, we will twitch, we will fiddle. And every time we do that, we keep that stress locked in. So allow the fingers to let go. Let them relax. And maybe just give them some gratitude. Set the gratitude intention for their help, because we use them so much. The breath is still coming in. The flame is still coming into the heart. The compassion and kindness are being breathed in and breathed through and out into the aura and into the arms. And now we move it down with the attention into the legs. And the legs and the feet and the toes. Allow that breath to breathe in there as well. Feel your legs relax. Your feet connect loosely but firmly to the floor. And the toes. And again, we focus often in meditation to the feet as helping us to ground, but perhaps less often to the toes. Toes also collect stress, but they do so in a different way. They are symbols of balance. Without toes, we would find it really hard to walk as freely as we do. So their stress is very necessary, but allow it to be a joyous, a joyful stress. They help us balance, they help us walk, they help us skip and run. Help them by walking barefoot as much as you can. Trust in the love of the earth to allow that process. And whilst you might not want to do that right now, but certainly you could do it in your home, barefoot, and observe how the toes splay and how they grip and how they allow you to turn quickly and be nimble and give them thanks. And then, with the same flame moving as it has been all the way, into the heart with the breath, into the arms, into the fingers and the hands, into the legs, the feet and the toes. Allow that process to continue. And now focus for a moment on the head. On the head, left brain and right brain. Let the flame of compassion and kindness move up into there as well. Allow that flame and that warmth to melt them together, left and right, to make them as one, to have respect for each other, so the left brain understands and recognizes the input of the right brain, the intuition, and the right brain recognizes and respects the input of the logical, rational left brain. They need to work together to become more of themselves. And as this is happening, allow a sense of calm and peace to prevail over you. From the mind down, relax and soften, letting things go, just being. And while you're in this beautiful state of just being who you are in the moment, I would invite you, with the eyes still closed, to come to the final part of this, which is your name, your first name, and you sound it to uplift your vibration. You speak it into being. You manifest it in the same way as in the beginning was the Word. You manifest your higher self into where you are now. And you do that through these words. And I will speak mine first, and then you speak yours, please, out loud. Very important, because that triggers your connection to the vibrations. I am K, I am. I am K, I am. Keep saying your own name and keep repeating it mindfully, slowly, deliberately, keeping in mind what you're saying and how that might feel, and connect with that energy where you are speaking up your vibration. In your own time, when you feel you've done enough, feel free now to come back into your body. Set your intention into gratitude before you come. Just give thanks for what you've put yourself through and what you've allowed yourself to feel. And also set the intention that parts of this will be remembered. When you need it, it will be there for you to take and use to keep yourself in the now and keep your energy up. And then, when you're ready, bring yourself back into your body, into your room, into your space, opening the eyes when you're ready and having a drink of water. I want to wait until everybody's back, and with their eyes open and they've had a little bit of water. And so now if you want to unmute yourself, start again. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. If you have anything you want to ask, put up a hand so I can see, and then unmute yourself, please. And I'll do my best. Sue, are you? No, somebody was. Okay.
I realised. I had to use a different computer, and then I realised
I saw your light come on, but I couldn't hear you. What's your question?
I don't have one, sorry.
Okay, no, sorry, my mistake. I thought you were, thought you had one burning on your lips. Anyone who has one burning on their lips, or indeed just wants to ask a question. Yes, Cherry. Yeah, now I can hopefully hear you. Hello.
Hello. Do personal numbers override a year number? Or which is the stronger?
The personal number feeds into it. So it's like part, and it will resonate with aspects of that year number. and in some cases you might get conflict with it, and in some cases it will run in parallel. But the year number will generally set the tone for the overarching energy of that year. Where you fit in then is doing a little dance in between all of that. Yes, so I don't know if that's really answered your question, probably not, but it works in parallel. You cannot separate. The more you have brought in, I mean, you know, it's a good question, because it brings up, of course, how many more elements in this pie, sorry, Christmas cake, we have, because every one of us contributes, and we either have the choice to work with it and with ourselves, or against. When I say choice to work against, I don't mean that as consciously as that, but you know, if we are not ripe yet spiritually or in consciousness to think even about uplifting anything or connecting with spirit, then we're going to stick to the lower frequencies of that number, our number, and then that's going to trigger the lower frequencies of the numbers that we're in, the soup we're swimming in, the sea we're swimming in, which will be the year energy. It's quite complex. There are a lot of threads in this tapestry. Have I answered that?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Gemma.
If perchance we were having, this is again just following up on what Terry was saying, if we were having a particularly similar numerological year to the year that we were going in, if we had a lot of corresponding numbers, would that intensify our experience, or would it make it smoother, or would we again have this peculiarity of conscious choice, unconscious unchoice?
It would make it more important that you chose the alignment, because your numbers, your personal numbers, are aligning with the year numbers. Therefore, if you step away from, if you choose the other side of the coin, for want of a better word, you are actively contradicting your own path, because your path is chugging along with the path of the year.
Thank you. That's useful. Yeah. Brilliant.
Anyone else?
So how do we work out what our number is for the year ahead?
That's a whole different ballpark and a whole different workshop. Sorry, I do numerological forecasts for people, but it takes me about 4 or 5 hours to set one up, and then I do a one-to-one across Zoom or whatever. But yes, it's not something I can just off the top of my head, because there's so many ingredients. There's so much. It's not that simple, and anyone that tells you it is, no.
What's used as the basis? Is it your name or your birth date?
Your date of birth and your name on your birth certificate.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
Anyone else?
Say again.
Yes, go for it. I thought you were sort of groping at something.
It's finding the right button.
I know.
I know I've done the numerology course with you, Kay, but it was so long ago.
I know.
I've forgotten most of it. So if you just mentioned there that it's the name that was given on your birth certificate, what consequence has it then if for people who change their names? I know a woman, when I had the shop, and she just always seemed to be changing her name for the next spiritual rebirth of who she was. And I wondered what that implication had.
Well, your name as it appears on the birth certificate delivers packages of energy related to that name. When you change, unfortunately people don't realize this, but you add to your backpack. You don't just have one suitcase, which was the one you had on your birth certificate. You've now got 2. And people sort of say, oh, but I don't like my name. You have to work your name. You can't take away from that. So at some level or other, you will always come into the opportunity, you'll be given the gift to work your name, even if you're not calling yourself by that. But by adding further baggages, suitcases, packages, parcels, backpacks to the first thing, you end up laden down with a lot of energy that actually you need to work through the original. It's a bit like saying my sole purpose is this, but I don't really want to do that this time. I want to do something else. But it's still what you have to do.
Thank you. And does that count for, you know how it's been the fashion for women to take on the second name of their husbands, and now much more so it's not fashion and everyone's a little bit more free and easy.
Yeah.
Does that equate in the same sort of thing? Have we as women yet again been loading ourselves?
We have up to now. We have very much so. Certainly in the olden days when you took your husband's name, part of the feminine energy was the power behind the throne. So in other words, you know, you were there to look after, to nurture, to sew the buttons on, to produce the children, to put the dinner on the table, to make sure his lordship could go out and do what he had to do and come back. And even if doing what he had to do involved other people or other women, you still were supposed to just put up with it and shut up with it. And that has changed since we've gone from really into the 2000s, but I would say the late 1990s, because again, it's like everything else. It moves. The nearer you come to the cusp of something starting, the more that new energy infiltrates. So it already has an influence. It's like, I think that's probably enough said. But when you take on your own name as well as your husband's name, what that allows is for the ability of the feminine to transmute what might be inappropriate or out of balance, out of kilter with the name that originally would have been yours if you took just your husband's name. But when you add the whole thing together, it's a wider way of dealing with something. It's a more equal way of dealing, because in your case, Taylor, you're bringing Taylor to, I've forgotten what the other one is, but anyway, you know it, yeah. And you're bringing that too. So it's much more balanced. You're not completely surrendering everything, but you're standing in your own truth and power, and you're using your own truth and power in order to help unfold the other energies. Because remember, when you're taking on someone else's name, you're not just taking on that person. You're taking on all the archetypes before and all the various, the generations. So you're taking on hereditary stuff. So in the olden days, it was up to the woman at the moment to try and dispel all of that and turn it all around and give it all a pot of, lick of gold paint and make it all look lovely. Impossible. Whereas now makes much more sense.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Thanks.
Hi, Kate. This is Vina.
Hi, Vina.
Hi. That was really interesting. A couple of questions, really. The first one regarding names. How about if you shorten the name? Like, for example,